Okay, so a while back, I started seeing all these videos pop up of like, why is the PS4 and the Xbox One still getting new games? Why won't they die? And like these people are acting like all shocked and surprised that the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One still have not retired yet. Whoa, we like 3 or 4 years into the PS5 Xbox Series X generation, and yet the PS4 and the Xbox One still will not die. They still gain new games brought to them, as well as new games being brought to the newer consoles. And a lot of people, they're just acting all dumbfounded, like, what's going on? What's happening? And I'm just kind of here off in the corner, like, no, this makes complete perfect sense to me. And I'm starting to notice that a lot of people aren't seeing what I'm seeing. So with this video, I'm going to take you through all the reasons why the PS4 and the Xbox One won't die, and it's for good reason. Let's get into it. Before I get into the crux of this video, article, whatever you want to call it, it would have seemed weird not to include it since I'm talking about it so much, but we do have the Xbox One S giveaway still going on at the time of this recording. And basically, you just have to sign up and you'll be in to compete for the free Xbox One S console. And so all you need to do is like or share any one of the videos on the channel, subscribe, and then direct contact us over at Facebook or on Twitter, which I like to call Twix, and just go, hey, I'd like to enter for the Xbox One S giveaway, and you'll be entered. You could do that and not do any of this stupid boring stuff beforehand, but just keep in mind, if you don't like, share, or subscribe, then it's going to be even longer before we get to the 1,020 subscriber cutoff. And the longer it takes, the more competition you're going to have. So it would behoove yourself, I'm going with it, to just go ahead and do all that tiny stuff as well to help out this channel. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so let's just get something straight right off the bat. The PS5 and Series X kind of suck. I mean, yes, I like them. I have both of them. I do kind of lean towards one more than the other, but let's be honest, they haven't been bringing forward their best foot forward. Probably shouldn't have used forward twice, but I'm continuing. And I mean, well, sure, there's things about them I really like, okay? There's really cool things about them, but there's some things about them that just, well, kind of suck. I'll get into some of those reasons later on. But let's go over kind of the first thing I want to point out. The PlayStation 2 had new games released for it until the PS4 launched. Like, up until 2013, you still saw new games coming out for the PlayStation 2. Now, granted, it was a little bit more rare at that time. It was mostly just sports titles, but you still saw games releasing for the PlayStation 2 back when the PlayStation 4 first launched. And the PlayStation 2 was one of the most successful consoles of all time, if not the most successful console of all time, with its 155 million units sold. Like, as of right now, it's at number one. The Switch is trying to surpass it, and no, I don't believe that blatant liar Jim Ryan when he says, oh no, the PlayStation 2 actually sold 160 million units. We just sold 5 million units of a console that we haven't been making any new units of for the past decade, and, you know, we just decided that, yeah, it sold another 5 million. We just didn't bother telling anyone. I don't know if he actually sounds like that. I know he's British, but I really cannot stand Jim Ryan. You know, he just is the absolute worst. But yeah, the PlayStation 2, we're still making new games long after it was no longer relevant. I mean, hell, back in 2008, long after the PS2 was no longer the premier console, but the PlayStation 3 was in full effect, Star Wars The Force Unleashed was ported to the PlayStation 2. Now, granted, there was a little bit of help from the Wii, because the Wii was a weaker hardware than the PS3 and the 360, and it was about the same strength as a PS2, so when people were making stuff for the Wii, it's like, hey guys, we can make a couple more bucks if we just do a couple things and bring it over onto the PlayStation 2. And it's like, okay, so that did help quite a bit in the PlayStation 2 selling stuff, you know, long after its console went under. I mean, it's not like there's another compatible system that is making weaker content. And, oh wait, there is. It's called the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch has been super impressive. And so when you have companies making something for the Nintendo Switch, like I'm glitching out, like Aliens Fireteam Elite, which is available on the Switch, if I'm not mistaken. Well, if it can play on the Switch, it can play on a PS4 and Xbox One. And so the Switch, like the Wii, is helping the previous generation get new stuff, because there's stuff already coming to the Switch. But that's not the only reason why the PS4 and the Xbox One are still holding out strong. The other reason is the install base on the PlayStation 4 is too great for devs to let go. I mean, you look at the install base of the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 has sold 117.2 million units. Where's the PlayStation 5? 59.3 million units, if you can believe those numbers. Sony's been doing some weird shit where they've been like, yeah, that counts. And it's like, technically that doesn't count. And so it's like, no, it counts. But going back to the PS4, that's 117.2 million compared to the PS5's 59.3 million. Now, let's say you're a game developer and you want the most bang profit for your buck. Are you going to make a PS5 exclusive? Or are you going to make something that can play on both PS5 and PlayStation 4? If you don't say the obvious answer, you're an idiot. I mean, this report just came out saying that of the 118 million people that are using, like, PlayStation Plus and whatnot, like, half of them are still utilizing PS4s. Yeah, almost 60 million people are still playing on the PlayStation 4, which is amazing. But you're a developer, you're getting ready to make a game, and it's like, look, it'd be cool to do a PS5 exclusive, but if we want to make good sales, we need to release this on the PS4. And so the install base is just way too great for developers to ignore the PlayStation 4. As much as Sony would like developers to move on to the PS5, it's just, they can't ignore it. And because of this leads to one of the other issues why people have not been jumping ship on the PS4 or the Xbox One. And that is, current gens haven't released enough true exclusives. And I mean true exclusives. I don't mean like, oh, well, this is a next gen only, but it's also available on Series X and PS5 and PC. No, I'm talking about true exclusives. Last time I touched on this subject, the number of true PlayStation 5 exclusives was around 7. And we're over the supposed halfway point in the generation. So you have people, it's like, wait a minute, I'm potentially only getting 14 true exclusives on this system before it becomes obsolete. You go back to the PlayStation 4, and there are so many true exclusives on that platform that, sure, the graphics are nicer and it's faster loading times, but you're not really giving any good incentives to get people to buy your system. James Carville once said, "It's the economy, stupid." And in terms of this, a lot of people like to use this stupid slogan. Well, it's not the exclusives that sell consoles anymore. It's the exclusives, dummy. Okay, it's the exclusives that bring people to your consoles. Look at the Nintendo Switch, okay? That is, what is it at right now? It might have switched. It's right now, sorry about that pun. It's right now at 141.32 million units sold. It is the third highest gross selling game console of all time, only being beat out by the DS, which is at 154 million units, and the PlayStation 2, which is actually at 155, not 160, Jim. And the Switch has 2 highly rated Zelda games that are exclusive to the platform. They have all these Mario games. They have a Metroid game that's exclusive plus another Metroid game on the way. They have an exclusive Bayonetta game. They have a lot of exclusive games that bring people to their consoles. And these are not the most graphically impressive games. Most of them are 2D side-scrolling games. And they're still selling the console because they are exclusive to the console. The Switch is doing much better than the Series X and the PlayStation 5, and that's because it has exclusives. Now, I think the Series X is going to start picking up speed because with the latest showcase and a lot of the exclusives coming, yeah, Series X has games, Sony doesn't right now. They have some third-party timed exclusives coming, which is nice, but we all know those are going to become available on other platforms eventually. So, it's not helping the current gens not having true exclusives. I mean, hell, Microsoft, I think the first true exclusive I got for Microsoft was Microsoft Flight Simulator, followed by Starfield. And that's about it. I have like 2 true exclusives for the Series X. And how many true exclusives do I have for the PlayStation 5? Let me count. Carry the 1, divide the 3, multiply the Q, and I have 0 true exclusives for the PS5. So, like, obviously, the current gen consoles are dropping the ball in this context, and obviously, when you have someone looking for a good gaming system, they're going to go with one of the 2 that has plenty of exclusives instead of the 2 that don't. And speaking of the exclusives, the rate of exclusives coming out is painfully slow. You go back to like the early 2000s. Game development, you saw a company release a game once a year. And so you'd see a huge banner come out in 2001, and then bam, 2002, the sequel's coming out. And then bam, 2003, sequel coming out. And so, like, you were getting a lot of exclusives coming out in succession back in those days. And then when the PS3, Xbox 360 came out, you saw it extend to about 2 years in between each game development cycle. And so it's like, okay, that makes sense. You had Gears of War released in 2006, and then in 2008, Gears of War 2 came out. And so it makes sense. And then by the end of that generation, it extended to about 3 years in between each game release. And honestly, 3 years also was doable. It sucked, but it's like, yeah, in 3 years we'll see what they're working on next, and that's fine. And now it's 5 to 7 years you have to wait in between each game, which this is not sustainable, because you have a company, they spend 5 to 7 years on a game, they're not making any money, they need that game to be a hit, and they can't handle any bad press with that game. And if there's any bad press, they have to go on the attack and say, oh, it's not actually our fault, it's just some hateful bigots online that are trying to sabotage us, when in fact they did something stupid, and they can't afford having any criticism, because if their game doesn't sell 7 million copies, it's a failure, because they're spending way too much money on their games. Do you see the bubble problem happening? And so, I mean, the rate of exclusives coming out is painfully slow. I mean, it's to the point now, you look at all the first-party studios for Sony, if they've released something already on the PS5, there's a good chance they're probably not releasing anything until next generation. You might get a sequel at the end of the generation, but like with studios like Polyphony, they've already released something on the PlayStation 5, and it's a live service game, so they're going to support it until the end of the generation, and maybe with the PS6 you might see their next game. And it's not sustainable. You need a better release rate. Now, Unreal Engine 5 is showing some promise with the speed at which people can develop stuff, and it does seem like things are getting developed a little bit faster when they're being made on Unreal Engine 5, but there needs to be kind of like a unified, hey guys, 3 years. 3 years is what we're going to spend on games. We can handle a hit if it's a bomb. Like, 3 years seemed to work. I think 3 years was a good development cycle. And the 5 to 7, nah, that is not sustainable, guys. And so just to wrap that segment up, you have one console, they were releasing stuff every 3 years, there's plenty of games on there, and then you have this console, they're releasing something every 7 years. Who the hell wants to buy that console? Oh, another thing that's killing any purchases of current gen consoles and making people go to the PS4 or Xbox One over it is the fact that I'm seeing rumblings or murmurings that the next gen might start in 2026. A year and a half, basically, is when the next gen might start. And so, what, a 6-year generation cycle? That's it? That's all you're getting? Why would anyone pay full price for something that lasted 6 years when they can get something not even half the price that lasted for... Wait, it's still going on now as we speak. And then another thing keeping the PS4 and Xbox One alive that is kind of something that bit the companies in the foot with is all of the live supported games. I'm not a huge live service guy, but I can acknowledge that there are some huge live service games that are still going strong, that are supported on the PS4 and Xbox One. Like Fortnite, you know, the biggest game in the world. Player Unknown Battlegrounds, I refuse to call it PUBG. Call of Duty Warzone. You have so many free-to-play live service games that are available on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Destiny, even. And what? Like, if you don't get the PS5 version, it loads a little slower, and it doesn't have ray tracing. Big deal. I think people will survive. And there's no reason for them to stop supporting these games on the PS4 and Xbox One. Why would Epic stop supporting Fortnite on the PS4 or Xbox One? People are still paying cash on those. They're still printing the money on those consoles. Keep supporting it. Okay, they'd be idiots not to support it. And so, games like those are keeping last gen alive very well. And then another thing that's keeping last gen alive is Game Pass and PlayStation Plus collection preview. I don't know, there's like 3 different PlayStation Plus tiers, but the 2 like streaming services that Sony and Xbox offer are available on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. So let's just use Game Pass as the example. For $15 a month, you get access to a library of over 100 video games. But okay, so just you pay $15 a month and you're getting access to new games every month. Why do you need to upgrade? I mean, sure, there's a couple of next-gen exclusive games on Game Pass that you can't play on Xbox One. In a way, I'll talk about that in a minute. But I mean, like, every month when they announce, yeah, these 7 games are coming to Game Pass, 9 times out of 10, they all are going to be available on the Xbox One. So why would someone with an Xbox One upgrade right now to get ray tracing, quick resume, and faster load times? Like, that's really all they're really offering. And if you can put up with these slower load times, most of the games are playable on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So yeah, the Game Pass live subscription services are not helping the newer generation anything by being available on last gen, and they're not going to remove them because they're basically cutting off a revenue stream that is making them a lot of money. Remember those numbers I said earlier for PlayStation 4? 117.2 million units out in the wild. Xbox One has 58 million units out in the wild. So, I mean, that is a lot of lost money. Not to mention that these were kind of the first true, like, digital experience game systems. Yeah, you could do digital games on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. They're shutting down the 360 marketplace on July 30th. I think this should be out before then. But like PlayStation 4, Xbox One, that was kind of like the first true online ecosystem type consoles where you had a digital library now that you could download and whatnot, and it was a lot more streamlined. And it's like, honestly, I don't see the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One marketplace going away anytime soon. Even well into next generation, I think they are still going to be available. Just because, like, once they got to that point, it's like, why fix it? We're just doing the same thing over and over again. But here's another reason why the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are still alive to this day. The current generation refuses to drop its price. I mean, this also goes for the games as well. The games, you have a new PS5 game come out, it stays in the $70-$60 range for over 2 years. Eventually, you'll see it drop to like the $50 range, and then if you're lucky on like a sale for GameStop, you might see it drop for $30 for like a couple of days, but then it goes back up to that like $50 range. Consoles are worse. Xbox, not so bad, which is surprising because I kind of like the Xbox Series X better than the PS5. But like the PS5, I've never seen that under 400. Even on sale, I've never seen it beneath 400. Xbox Series X, I've seen on sale for like 350. And so that one is kind of dropping in price, I've noticed. But the PS5 refuses to drop in price. I just got a PS4 for $25. So imagine you're left with the dilemma, do I want to pay $500 for a PS5, or the 25 was an oddity, so let's say $100 for a PS4. It plays about 80% of the same games that come out on PlayStation 5. And the only downside is it loads a little slower, and it doesn't have ray tracing, and the fan is noisier. Like, I'm really trying to think of what is a detriment to the PS4 under the PS5. And it's like, honestly, for the price difference, you can't beat it. I mean, the PS4 is a better buy right now than the PlayStation 5, because the PlayStation 5 refuses to drop in price. And so, yeah, like, every now and then I'll see someone buy a PS5, but it's not as common as, like, I was seeing last generation with PS4s and Xbox Ones. Okay, PS4s. Xbox One did not sell that well last generation. And then wrap the price, the insane price of the PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 5 games, with the fact that we are in a terrible economy right now. I know there's some idiots out there saying, oh no, this is like the best economy ever. No, we are in a complete dog shit economy right now that is about to, like, burst at any minute. I do stuff with stocks, and as someone who invests stocks and whatnot, I can see that the good stock prices we're getting now, that some of my idiot friends are saying, you see, that's indicative of a good economy. Yeah, those are like inflated numbers that they're pushing so that they don't show bad stock numbers to give the appearance of a good stock market, when in fact it's like horrifying. At any moment you might get another 2008 The Big Short situation here. So, like, anyone who wants to use the stock market as an argument for that we're in the best economy of our lives, yeah, no, you need to do some research, because we are in a really bad place. But I mean, you look at food at the supermarket, it's really expensive. Bread, eggs, milk, it's all up. All the food is up. Chicken, meat, it's all up. And we are in a terrible economy right now. I hate to get into politics on this channel, because I really don't like bringing politics into gaming and entertainment, but it's a factor when talking about these consoles. We are in a shit economy right now, and the people who can drop $500 for a game console have already done it, okay? The people who are struggling, they can in no good conscience drop $500 for a game console. $100 though, that's a different story. You know, they can finally get a PS4 and play all those games. And also, crossplay isn't doing these companies any favors, because if you can crossplay with PS5 and PS4 users, then any friend who has a PS5, you'll still be able to play with them online. So that while very consumer friendly, thankfully Sony finally got around doing that, in the end, it does kind of hurt them a little bit in terms of selling newer consoles. Now, going back to the point I made about current gen games, they don't go on sale, they're really expensive. The $70 price hike they did with games, they decided to do at the beginning of this really bad economy, and it's just hurting more and more. And some analysts would say that, like, yeah, companies, they've noticed that, like, only a fourth of their sales are when the game's at full $70 price. And it's like, gee, anyone could have told you guys that, okay? I do not pay. The only thing I think I paid full price on for a game was Starfield, and I did a bunch of trade-ins to get that price down. So technically I paid full price for Starfield, but no. Typically, I just wait till something goes on sale. It's in like the $20 range before I buy it. Okay, I can wait. Even if it's going to take a year or two, I can wait. I don't see the logic in paying $70 for one game. And a lot of people see that. You don't have this issue with last gen. Xbox One, PlayStation 4 games. A lot of those games, the most expensive ones, are like $30. And, you know, like, one that doesn't really go down in price is a game, Nier Automata, or Automata, I can't remember the last name. Really popular game, especially amongst PlayStation owners. I've never seen that under $20 when it was on sale. It's usually like $30. But even then, that's one of the expensive ones. I see so many PS4 and Xbox One games on sale for $10, $5, $15. And it's like, dude, if you want to get into games, PlayStation 4, Xbox One makes so much more sense than a Series X or a PlayStation 5. Another thing that is a factor is that graphics aren't everything anymore. Hell, I think it was either Activision, it was Capcom. They just released this survey and they had a bunch of gamers take it, and one of the surprising things was that gamers, their main thing that they want out of Capcom games is gameplay, not graphics. And so they don't mind if something looks graphically bad if the gameplay is tight. And one of my coworkers, he was saying, yeah, I don't really care about graphics that much anymore. And like, he's right. We kind of hit a point where games started looking good enough that we didn't need to keep building. And so, yeah, with this generation, some of the new games shown off, it's like, yeah, that's very gorgeous. But honestly, I wasn't wincing with PS4 only games. Hell, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 games, there's some games on those systems that, like, make my jaw drop to this day, like how gorgeous they look. And those are consoles that are almost 20 years old now. So we kind of hit a point where graphics got good enough, and it's like, okay, graphics are good, let's focus on gameplay. And developers just kept working on graphics and graphics and graphics. It's just like, okay, that's gorgeous, but how's the gameplay? And a lot of gamers, now they're kind of hoping for gameplay improvements instead of graphical improvements. I mean, I look at something like Hellblade 2. Yeah, it's good looking, but comparing it with the first one, it doesn't push the bar that much, and like the first one still looks great. I'm not gonna lie, I did not wince once when I was playing the first one. It's like, hey, this is a great looking game, and the second one, it looks a little bit better, but I mean, what's new with the gameplay? Gameplay is exactly the same. In fact, it's been drawn down a bit, but we really focused on the textures and the graphics, and that's kind of all these systems have to show for themselves. Is the Series X and the PlayStation 5 are really powerful, but the games didn't really change from the PS4 to the Xbox One. And this leads to kind of like the next segment. The technological leap was very small, going from PS4, Xbox One to PlayStation 5, Series X. You look at like the PlayStation 1 jump to the PlayStation 2, it was surprising. And then you see the PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. That was impressive. It's like, wow, they really pushed the bar with this. But then with PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4, it was like, okay, I could definitely see improvements, but honestly, a lot of the stuff that's exclusive for PS4, if you just turned down the graphics a little bit, you could have played it on the PS3. And then with PS4 to PS5, you really have to squint and turn your head sideways to see like how it's different from the PlayStation 4 version. And so the technological leap from last gen was not that significant. And so with the graphics not being anything, the technological leap not being that severe, tell me, what can't the PlayStation 4 do compared to the PS5? It can't load things as fast, okay. It can't do ray tracing unless you're talking about the first Crysis, because they managed to get software ray tracing working on that, okay. And you know, it doesn't have the haptic feedbacks of the controller. That's it. You compare it with the Xbox Series X, get rid of the haptic feedbacks because they don't have that. It can't do quick resume, ray tracing, and load as fast. It's like, oh, okay. Those aren't significant reasons why a developer should stop working on a Xbox One or PS4 game. Now, granted, there's some exceptions, like Resident Evil 4 Remake. They released on PlayStation 4, There's a PS5 and a Series X version, but there's no Xbox One version. They like stopped working on that version. So you do see some things like that, but there's still a PS4 version. And then the other thing we're talking about is like current gen, when they come out with a next gen exclusive, they're not really pushing the envelope in terms of advancements in gaming. The only exception I know of this is Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that's because they have like a 1-to-1 scale replica of Planet Earth. Something you couldn't really do on last gen, unless you use something which I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, apart from that, like when I see open world game, the map's not any bigger than what you saw on last gen. When you're seeing a shooter, it's not doing anything that you haven't seen on last gen. And so current gen is not pushing the envelope like it did with the last generation. And I'm not hearing anyone saying, yeah, we weren't able to get this to work on last gen, unless you're talking about graphics. Like, graphically, I've heard people say, yeah, we can't do the level of graphics on last gen that we can do on current gen. But, okay, so you just turn the graphics down. And, like, you know, you're seeing stuff released for Series X later because they have to release it on the Series S, which is a weaker piece of hardware. And, yeah, it takes some time to get stuff toned down, but eventually it releases. And so, I'm not seeing any game apart from like Microsoft Flight Simulator, where it's like, okay, there's no way last gen can play this. I mean, all of my next gen or current gen stuff, like right now I'm looking at Aliens, Fireteam Elite, Dying Light 2, Jedi Fallen Order, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Callisto Protocol, Guardians of the Galaxy, Resident Evil Village, Jedi Survivor, Ghost of Tsushima. All those can play on last gen. All of them. Without too much stuttering. Without too many issues. And so, when you have a generation that isn't forcing you to jump to next gen, like last gen did, there's no reason to get. Last generation, a game that really pushed me to going for a PS4 was Batman Arkham Knight, because they were saying, like, we could not get the Batmobile to work on 360 or PS3. We could only get it to work. I'm not seeing anything like that with this generation. So, yeah. I mean, there are some things that are next gen only, like Suicide Squad, Killer Justice League, but that was just, you know, they could have gotten that to work on last gen if they wanted to. If Fortnite can work, that can work. Granted, not saying it should work, because I've heard it's a terrible game. And then speaking about games, last generation has games that defined the generation. This generation doesn't. Like, I mean, God of War 2018 was a huge defining game for that generation. Horizon Zero Dawn, Bloodborne. I mean, I'm just talking about PlayStation now. These were games that were like system sellers. What does PS5 have? Returnal? Yeah, if you're into that kind of game, yeah. I'm not into that type of game. Ratchet & Clank, I mean, okay, it's PS5 exclusive, but let's be honest, you can play a ton of Ratchet & Clank games elsewhere on PlayStation 3. There's one on PlayStation 4. Like, there's not a driving incentive. The reason why God of War was such a huge deal was because they made like a drastic new take on God of War. So while you could have played the first trilogy on PS3, the 2018 one was a new beast unto itself. That's not the case with Ratchet & Clank. It's just like every other Ratchet & Clank. There's a couple of gimmicks, but it didn't redefine the franchise. I mean, sure, you could say Spider-Man 2, but you can play Spider-Man 1 on PlayStation 4, and from what I've heard, there's only a couple of new gameplay elements added into Spider-Man 2. So, you know, that's not really a defining generational game. Not like Zelda Breath of the Wild was on Nintendo Switch. I mean, that made you have to go out and get a Switch. Spider-Man 2 doesn't really do that. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a huge game. I could get Spider-Man 1 on a PS4 and not drop $500 for a console. And this was just me personally, but last generation, I feel, was the conclusion of the golden age of gaming. It's different for everyone. Some people say like the 80s was the start, the 90s was the golden age. For me, the golden age of gaming was 2000 to 2020. That was the golden age of gaming. That was the peak. That was when you had E3 at its best. You had massive franchises like Mass Effect. You had the God of War trilogy. That was when Call of Duty was introduced, and you saw the best Call of Duties available in that 20-year span. I mean, 2000 to 2020 was the golden age of gaming, and it kind of died in 2020. And so PS5, Series X, they're not really part of the golden age. I mean, they can play the golden age, but they're not part of the golden age. And Xbox One, PlayStation 4, they were part of the golden age of gaming. And speaking of the golden age of gaming, current gen has way too much competition with retro consoles now. I mean, there's a lot of people, those like this one questionnaire online. When will people realize that they can get the same enjoyment that they do from new games with retro games? And that's not off. That's actually pretty accurate, because a lot of people, they think retro games, they think like the little 16-bit side-scrolling. No, that's ancient. Retro games now consist of Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, Xbox, Dreamcast, Sega Genesis. Like, there's a lot of impressive consoles now in the retro landscape, and these are not terribly expensive. Like I said recently, I got a PlayStation 4 for $25. I got a busted PS2 for $15 that I repaired and I brought back to life. And so, when you know how to shop the deals, you can play a lot of huge retro games and their entire libraries for the same price that it would take you to get one of the consoles, current gen consoles, and a couple games. You can get one of these old consoles and a ton of games. You can get multiple retro consoles and a ton of games for around the same price. So retro is now a big competitor with current gen, and unless they want to implement something that starts destroying used copies of games, which we'll go over as well as it did when Xbox tried doing that, I don't see any way of retro not being current gen consoles' biggest competitor. And then another neat, interesting bit is, I don't know about PlayStation 4. I think it can. If not, it'll be coming soon. But Xbox One can live stream all current gen Xbox Series X exclusives over the cloud. So if you have, I think you need a Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for $15 a month. If you're paying the $15 a month, you can play Hellblade 2 on an Xbox One through cloud streaming. If your internet's good enough, you can play Starfield, Microsoft Flight Simulator, the new Indiana Jones, the new Avowed, the new Doom, the new Gears of War on an Xbox One. If you have strong enough internet and you're subscribed to Xbox xCloud. So that alone is good enough reason not to get a next-gen system. If you're already getting Game Pass and you have really good internet, why would you get a Series X? You could stream all that stuff. And then another thing worth pointing out is there's something, I don't say this to be demeaning or insulting, but there is a classification of gamers known as the poor generation. I say this because I was one of them. Growing up as a kid, I was part of what I'm calling the poor generation. This is a group of gamers that cannot afford the newest, shiniest consoles. These are people that they can't look at a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One until the PS5 or Series X comes out. Then they can start looking at it. I was kind of that when the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One came out. I finally was able to start looking at PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360. Because at the time, I could not afford them brand new. But now that a new generation was coming out, I was able to afford the 360 and the PlayStation 3. I got 360 for $50. And I had a blast playing through those games that originally I never even dreamed of getting. And then when I got a PS4 in like 2016, it was like a wow moment. Like, I can't believe I have a current gen console. There are so many people right now that they are looking at PS4 and Xbox One for the first time. And so more people are getting into those consoles because now they can afford them. And like, I remember a while back, I was talking with this one kid, and he was talking about, yeah, I'm getting ready to get a PlayStation. I went, a PS5? It's like, no, a PS3. I can't afford a PS4. And it's like, yeah, he was part of the poor generation of gamers. I was right there with that kid. I used to be that kid. And so there's a lot of people, earlier I talked about how terrible our economy was. There's a lot of people part of the poor generation that now they're starting to get the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and they're starting to experience these consoles for the first time. And so they are keeping these consoles alive. And because of that, that gives the last generation a boost in sales from people that couldn't afford the current generation. And so, yeah, you're seeing more and more people buying PS4 versions of a game than a PlayStation 5 version. It also helps that they have the upgrade path for a lot of PlayStation 4 games, so it's like, hey, if I ever get a PS5, I can always upgrade my games, like Resident Evil 4. And so that's kind of a cool add-on. I'm not saying that's hurting next gen, but it's kind of a neat thing that that's available. I hope they do that with PS6 and Xbox 720 Hug Kiss Series Q, whatever the hell they call it. And then just one final little note. I won't say this is quite the reason, but it's certainly not helping. During the PlayStation 4 generation, Sony made some great decisions from a financial standpoint and a corporate decision standpoint. PlayStation 5 has not been doing that. Like, the PlayStation Vita made sense. The PlayStation Portal doesn't. I don't know why that's getting sold out everywhere. Literally, your phone can do everything that can do. I don't get it. Like, the way they implemented VR1 was very solid. The way they're implementing VR2 has not been solid. They've been making some serious mistakes. Thankfully, they got rid of the tech CEO, Jim Ryan, that was dragging that company through the mud. They now have two guys running CEO on the company. Hopefully they do a good job. One of them is a game developer, so he might have better insight on making decent gaming decisions. But yeah, like, it doesn't help that there's some really bad corporate decisions Sony's been making. Like, making all their stuff not have Bluetooth is really stupid. And so that can't be helping. I'm not saying it is a factor, but it can't be helping. So, all those reasons are why I believe the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One won't die. Because of all those reasons. I know I spent like an hour talking about it, but there's just so many obvious reasons why those two consoles are still alive and well. And, well, that's why. So, anyway, that's been my thoughts on why the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One won't die, and for good reason. My name's Christopher Kyle with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all for today.